I'm going to talk about estate planning, but what I really want you to understand is estate planning is about this. This is my granddaughter Sophia. It's not about money. It's about family. It's about the things you want to leave people. It's about the heritage of the things that are important to you to leave to those who are left behind. And can you imagine how much I want to make sure this little girl is protected for her whole life? And it's absolutely, absolutely the most important thing in my life. And that's why I do estate planning. Say bye-bye. Nono's got to go talk now. You ready? Nono's got to go and talk. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Estate planning. Estate planning is about 4 major components. And I'm going to use this board to show you what I mean. There's always the family. And by the way, I'm not an artist, just so you understand that up from the get-go. So we have 2 major members of the family, and guess who these people might be? Well, most people are going to say this is the husband and this is the wife, but in a Scottish family, this would be the husband in the kilt and this would be the wife in the trousers. So, you never know what you're looking at when you're looking at it. So we have the people, and then the other important thing about estate planning is what we call stuff. Now, stuff is what's important to you asset-wise. The word assets, though, means a lot of different things to different people. An accountant has a particular definition, a banker has a definition, but for the rest of the world, me included, stuff means the stuff that's important to me, it's precious to me. Now, unfortunately, in any estate planning, there's always one other party that you have to know about, and that's the state. In this case, since I live in New York State, and I have to do a disclaimer right here, everything I'm going to talk about is New York State law. I'm licensed to practice in New York State. However, some of the principles will be the same no matter what state you're in. So in our state, we have New York State. So here are the 4 major components. We got 2 people, the stuff, and the state. Now there's one other thing you have to understand. Most people think estate planning is about death and dying. What happens after I die? Well, yes, that is important. But what's equally important is what happens to these 2 people and their stuff during their lifetime. So estate planning is about 3 times of your life. Stage 1, I'm alive and well and everything's going well. I'm in total control of me and my stuff. Stage 2, something has happened to one of the 2 of us, either a mental or physical disability, and now I'm no longer in control of me or my stuff, but I'm still alive. Stage 3, somebody passes away. And by the way, I'm going to draw a line down here, and that means that somebody has passed away. Even though I'm smiling, that's a dramatic and sad event. Now, what am I talking about here? Well, husband, we'll use, this is husband over here. Matter of fact, I'll do husband and wife. Husband is out driving, coming home one evening, going through an intersection he always goes through, and he's got the green light when all of a sudden, out of the blue, some guy who's been drinking all afternoon doesn't see the intersection and blows right into husband's side of the car. And now husband is in a coma. So who's in charge of husband? In other words, who's going to make his medical decisions? And just so you know, whenever I meet with a couple and I have a husband and wife, I always ask the wife, who's in charge of his medical decisions while he's alive and well? You know what I hear? She's always in charge. So it doesn't matter what you guys think. We know that the women or the wives are always in charge of what happens to us. Vice versa, we know that the women, our wives, do not want us to be anywhere near their medical doctors. So they're always dealing with the doctors by themselves. So now husband's in a coma. Who's in charge of making his medical decisions? The thing that most people don't realize is actually New York State is in charge from the get-go. They have a group of professionals called doctors, and the doctors take something called the Hippocratic Oath, and that oath says that they will do everything they can to make sure the husband is taken care of physically. But what if the wife knows what the husband wants? Can the wife tell the doctors what to do for the husband? The answer is no. See, New York State put the doctors in charge. They actually have the power of life and death over the husband. What do I mean by that? Well, what if the only thing keeping the husband alive is a machine? But for the machine, the husband would be dead. How many days is that going to go on before we have to decide that the machine is going to be pulled? Well, the doctors will actually make that decision. Once that decision is made, they will then go to the wife and or, by the way, we have some other players down here. Let's call them the children. So we have some children who are also part of the family. So there we have children. Son, daughter, a baby in diapers. So now, the doctors will come to the wife and say, we don't think he's going to make it anymore. Can we have your permission to kill him? What a terrible place to put a spouse in or an adult child in order to make that decision. So most people don't like that. They want to have the family member, somebody they know and love and trust, in charge of their medical decisions. If that's what they truly want, they need to put a document between them and the state. And that document, I'm going to put the initials HCP, stands for Healthcare Proxy. Now, all the states have a law on the statutes that say, if you have one of these documents created, then the person you name, your agent, can deal with the doctors and tell the doctors what to do for you. Now, everybody has those. Most people do. I think about the statistic is 3 out of 5 people have a healthcare proxy. Now, I've got some sad news for you. Most people have a healthcare proxy that's ineffective. Now, in the world of laws, there's a hierarchy of laws. We have town and village laws down here. Then we have city laws. Then we have county laws. Then we have state laws. Then we have federal laws. Now, the federal government has passed what's called the HIPAA law, the Health Insurance Portability and Privacy Act. What that actually says is that in order for somebody to look at the written medical records, this person, the husband who's in a coma, had to have given specific written permission to his wife to be able to look at the medical records of the doctor. Now, interestingly enough, New York State about 2 years ago passed a law that said as long as there's a family member involved, the doctors can deal with the family member and vice versa. Now, you have a state law and you have a federal law. The federal law says it must be written. The state law says it doesn't. At some stage, those two are going to come into conflict. What the result will be, we don't know because it hasn't got there yet. If you want to be sure that your wishes are carried through, you should always have the HIPAA language inside your document. The second thing, remember I asked you about how many days? Do you really want the doctor to come to your wife or your child and ask them for permission to kill you? In whose hand do you want that decision? Do you want your wife's hand, the doctor's hand, your child's hand, or in your own hand? In other words, you have already made the decision while you're fully conscious and aware that after X number of days, if the only thing keeping you alive is a machine, a buffer of the machines, then I'm pulling my own plug. The third thing that I see wrong with most healthcare proxies, it deals with what's wrong with me physically. I mean, think about it. Doctors can do amazing things with us physically. I remember in 1999, a relative of mine went in for a triple bypass surgery. Went in, they replaced part of his heart, they used part of a pig, and 3 weeks later, he's up and walking around. Just today, I saw in the paper, in our local Observer Dispatch, there's an article about a guy who had triple bypass surgery and he was out and running, or he was out and exercising 15 minutes a day within 3 days. Just amazing what they could do physically. But the thing they can't do is the mental. They used to call it old age, dementia, Alzheimer's, that kind of thing. So now the healthcare proxy usually deals with what happens if something is physically wrong with me. Well, what if something's mentally wrong with me? Does my agent have the authority to put me where I need to be, giving me the greatest degree of independence? The answer to that is no. So those are things typically we see wrong with a healthcare proxy. Now, most people have a document called a living will. And in New York State, the living will is usually drawn at the same time as a healthcare proxy, and the living will has a bunch of little boxes on it. And you talk about, do I want to be hydrated? Do I want to be intubated? Do I want to have nutrition? Do I want to be ventilated? Do I want to be put on a machine? Now, there's no statute that says what's written in here the doctors must follow. The statute says what's written in the healthcare proxy the doctors must follow. So the final component is usually whatever's written in here should actually be written in there. Now think about it. If you have all the right language in the healthcare proxy, who's now in charge of you when the time comes and you're no longer able to take care of yourself? Somebody you trust, either a spouse or a child. So, husband still, by the way, I was born and raised in Nairobi, Kenya, in case you hear a little accent. We were taught never to hurt or harm women, so I will be maiming and killing the gentleman in this scenario. So now he's still in a coma. Who's in charge of his stuff? See, a lot of people are confused about stuff. Most people are going to say, well, the wife's in charge of the stuff. Well, that may or may not be true, because this stuff actually is composed of 3 distinct groups of things. And I'll do it like this. There's the jointly owned stuff, which means, for example, the house. A husband and wife own the house together. What does that mean? The first one who dies, automatically the survivor gets the benefit of that. So if you think about a house, if you think about a bank account, if you think about anything jointly held, if one of the parties dies, the other one automatically gets it. And one of the questions I asked the surviving wife is, well, how do you get it? It's really simple. All she has to do is show a death certificate showing that her spouse has passed away, and she automatically owns it. So if husband and wife are jointly owning, and he's in a coma, who's in control of this? Well, the wife still is. Then you have the wife's stuff. For example, maybe the wife owns her own car. Husband's in a coma, who's in charge of wife's stuff? Well, the wife is, it's her stuff. Well, let me come over here. Here's the husband's stuff. Husband owns his own car, or he has a piece of property, or a business. Who's now in charge of the husband's stuff? Well, he is, but he's in a coma. See, New York State now will allow the wife to come before them and go through what's called a guardianship proceeding, or an Article 81 in New York State. What does that mean? Well, would it surprise you to know that you can actually have somebody put in charge of your stuff, but you have to go and use a lawyer and go through court? Now, you all know that lawyers don't cost any money, that they're cheap and they're very efficient and get things done very quickly. I have a bridge in Brooklyn I want to sell you if you just believe that one. Now, actually what happens, it takes probably 6 months and can cost up to $15,000 for the wife to get the authority, if she had to go through New York State, to start looking after the husband's stuff. Now, the smart couple will have said, no, that's not, we don't want that. We want to keep New York State out as much as possible. And notice, by the way, these are all New York State's rules. These are all New York State's rules. But I can put a document over here that puts a level of protection between the family and New York State, and it's called a power of attorney. Now, a power of attorney in and of itself is a great document, but there's one problem with a power of attorney, and here's the problem. If I pull out my checkbook, and I wrote your name as the payee, and then I signed my name on the bottom of the check, and then I ripped it out, and I gave it to you, what could you do with my check? We call that check, with your name and my signature, a blank check. What technically you can do is go down to my bank account and say to the teller, well, Harry gave me this check. How much money does he have in his account? You write that number in there, you give it to the teller, she looks at your ID, and the next thing you know, she has all the money. And I wake up, and I say, wait a second, I want my money back. Can I go to the person to whom I gave my blank check and say, give me my money back? The answer is no. Can I sue them and go to court and say, give me my money back? The answer is no. The reason why is because I gave them that money. So for most people, that's exactly what a power of attorney is. A standard statutory short form power of attorney is like giving somebody a blank check, which is okay between husband and wife, because most times they trust each other. But here's a scenario most people don't think about. Who's going to be the alternate? What if husband and wife are in that car together and they're both in a coma? Neither one is dead, so they still own the stuff, but they're both in a coma. Who's controlling it? Not them. Usually they'll have an alternate. One of their children will be the alternate to the wife or the husband. You have to be over the age of 18. Well, that's great, but what is a child going to do with all the stuff? Don't know. So the power of attorney is lacking one thing, instructions, what to do in case there's nobody around there. So the power of attorney should have that written in. The second thing that most people don't understand is this child is probably the in-town child. What about the 2 out-of-town children? What can the in-town child do with a blank check? Whatever he or she wants. The third thing that most people don't understand is, what if my child is married? So now I have a son and a daughter-in-law. What if I'm driving with my wife and my son in the car and the 3 of us are in a coma? And by the way, this is stuff that's not made up. This is actually from real life experiences that we as lawyers have had. So now we have coma dad, coma mom, coma son, but we have the daughter-in-law. Who has the blank check over mom and dad's stuff? Well, by statute, there's a flow-through provision, which means that if I give my blank check to somebody and they have given a blank check to somebody, automatically my blank check flows through to that person. So to put it in simple terms, how comfortable would you be with your son-in-law or daughter-in-law with a blank check over everything you have? Because remember, if they exercise that blank check authority, they can go in and take it all and you cannot get it back. So, 3 simple documents. The purpose is to make sure that your family stays in control during your lifetime. And make sure that New York State keeps their hands out of your stuff. Now, by the way, there's one other thing about the stuff over here I just want to point out to you. Is that dad's stuff or husband's stuff, there's an important component. There's stuff in there that's called beneficiary designated, like your life insurance, your IRA, your 401k.